Jayson Tatum has the ability to be the best Celtic there ever was. Okay? That's within him, within his capability. And I think it's going to take that kind of thing in terms of his game specifically, but in terms of the larger picture, having that in his game and having that part of his game be a catalyst to the Celtics winning championships, plural.
Celtics Beat is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
What's up, everyone? New edition of Celtics Beat. Welcome in. Adam Kaufman here. No Evan Valenti, although he wanted to be here. I kind of moved around the time on him, so he's still behind the scenes doing the usual production that he does, but we'll have him back on camera in part of the show next week. Looking forward to it as we inch closer and closer to the playoffs and closer and closer to March Madness, for that matter. We're in conference tournaments and all sorts of excitement there. Steve Bulpett is here with us from Heavy.com, and Steve, of course, is a good friend of the show. You can check out his work. Always encourage you to check out his work on Twitter specifically, where he will post those articles and commentary and the great stats from the one and only Dick Lipe as well. You can get him on Twitter at Steve B. Hoop. Steve, how are you, man?
Living the dream.
Being here is only part of it. That's maybe a fever. I'm not sure.
Well, after a 1 hour bout with inanimate objects at the gym, this is actually pleasant.
Oh, well, I'll take whatever compliments I can get, obviously. How are you enjoying, I mean, just being the basketball junkie that I know you are, and this goes, beyond the NBA and your connection, obviously, to Dayton University, who's, I got to tell you.
University of Dayton.
University of Dayton, pardon me.
The Commissioner Gordon. No, Commissioner Silver screwed that up with the Obi Toppin draft a few years ago. We still haven't forgiven him.
Well, I have nothing but affection for Dayton because they've made me a little money of late betting on their games, which is always a fun thing. How much are you enjoying the sort of start to March Madness? I know we're not into the field of 68 and 64 just yet. We're into conference tournaments, but are you watching these games much?
Sure. March Madness started before March because there are teams that are like trying to, look at the Big East, that situation. I was out in Indianapolis for All-Star Weekend, and I went to the Butler Creighton game. Don't tell me that wasn't a tournament game for Butler.
Sure.
They lost it, but that was very much, a game that they desperately needed. So yeah, that stuff's already started, and that was February. Yeah.
Are you I don't know that you are. I don't know how many people would be like this that don't specifically work for an NBA team and in scouting departments and that type of thing. But, obviously, you cover the whole NBA, but the Celtics most closely. Do you ever find yourself watching some of these games or at some of those games and, just saying like, man, that guy would be a great Celtic. I'd love to, see him in Boston.
Not so much a Celtic. I look at guys and say, that's an NBA skill. What else does he have that would keep him on the floor? You know what I mean? Like the Creighton's got a couple of guys. This guy, Baylor Shireman, a lot of big offensive package. Is there enough also there that's going to keep him on the floor defensively in the NBA? So that's the kind of stuff I look at. And, I guess it's just kind of by instinct. I don't go into a game saying, I wonder how this guy is going to be. Mm-hmm. But the other weird thing is, I can't judge people off of TV entirely. I need to see it in person. Maybe if I did it a lot more, I'd get used to that. But I remember a couple of years ago seeing this one guy. I won't say his name, and 6'10" guy, whatever, nice soft touch. This guy would be, a good stretch four. He might really be able to do something in the NBA. And I saw him in person, and it's like, that man got to find a country. Ain't gonna happen because the speed is all relative.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk obviously about the Celtics. That's what people care about first and foremost, or at least it's why they come to this show. If they do it all, and we're grateful to you. Always rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, Celtics Beat, wherever you get your podcast. But it's been an interesting stretch here, a little small stretch. I mean, I guess you could push it out to a month and change, really, if you go back to the start of an 11-game winning streak and the C's just eviscerating opponents on a basically a nightly basis. I mean, winning many of those games by 20 plus points and just shattering opponents. And then everything sort of turned a corner to some degree with that, really deflating loss in Cleveland last week, a game in which the Celtics led by 22 points in the fourth quarter, no less. I mean, we see 20-point leads blown in the NBA all the time. That's a nightly occurrence these days. It's not like, the NBA of decades ago where that actually felt insurmountable. But 22 in the fourth quarter, that's the largest blown lead the Celtics have organizationally ever had. And I still thought they would find a way to pull it out at the end there, and it just didn't come to fruition. It was, unfortunate, and that set up what turned into their first stretch of back-to-back losses in months. They go to Denver last Thursday, and that was another very winnable game. Came down to the wire. You wrote quite a bit about this game for heavy.com, and in terms of the late game execution, the fact that and this has been a kind of an ongoing question with the Celtics, and Chris Forsberg tweeted out the numbers at one point, basically outlining by the NBA's metrics, the crunch time clutch statistics, these games defined by games within 5 points with 5 minutes or less. You start there, and the Celtics have a great record and great performance, but the more you filter it down to, 3 minutes or less, 2 minutes or less, 1 minute or less to obviously the end of the game, it just gets progressively worse, which is part of what you wrote about in terms of, really what Denver and the defending champ, what they do so well versus what the Celtics are still trying to figure out as they pursue Banner 18. Before we even talk about the win over Phoenix in a bounce back most recently, what was your takeaway? Because that was a marquee matchup. It was a potential finals preview.
Well, I mean, you look at all the Celtic wins, and it's like fine, they're rolling up numbers, but the question's always going to be, what's going to happen when it gets late in a game, in an important game, in the playoffs. I mean, how did they get knocked out in 2018, 2019, 2020? 21 was a weird year, but the finals in 22, and then last year. Why did this team get eliminated? They had, at the end of games, they would stop doing what they're supposed to do, or what got them their success, and it would turn into guys saying, "Oh, give me the ball, I'll go make a play." Very gallant. We've talked about this before, Adam. Very gallant of you, but you're taking your team out of your offense. You've given the defense a break. Look how many times one guy has the ball and guys are standing around. This team, if you look at this team in particular, even as compared to the teams of the last several years with the Celtics, they can beat you in so many ways. I wrote a story earlier this year. If the Celtics move the ball, they're unguardable. Okay, they've got too many people that can beat you. They've got too many ways to space the floor. Too many guys that can hurt you. And to go away from that with hero ball, and that's kind of a pejorative, but it's guys, it doesn't mean the guy's a jerk. It means he's trying to take responsibility and go make a play, but you've taken your team out of what it does best. If that ball keeps moving, I'd want the ball in Jayson Tatum's hands as much as possible as a finisher. If he's running off 3 picks, he's got to get open. He's got to be in a better position to make a play. And then when the defense comes to load up on a Jayson Tatum, which it has to, really, because he's really not, it's hard to guard him one-on-one. When that extra defense comes, then you burn him. You're passing to, there's 4 other guys on the floor with you, and they're all very capable NBA scorers. Not like, oh, he can hit a shot for you. No, these are all 4 NBA scorers.
No, it's true. I mean, I think back to, again, the Cleveland loss, and we can talk more about Denver, obviously, but Tatum at the end of the game, as you're alluding to. I mean, someone counted, it was like 19 dribbles that Tatum had the ball, before ultimately trying to do something. And I think I wish that Tatum, I don't blame him for doing it, but I wish for his own sake, quite frankly, that Tatum had never mentioned how much he, idolized and looked up to Kobe Bryant, because it did him a disservice in that any time he, at the end of a game, it throwback to like Paul Pierce before, KG, even with KG and Allen to a degree, but certainly before, where it's Paul Pierce, end of game, ISO ball, what's coming. There's a lot of that in Tatum's game. And so that happens, and whether it works out or it doesn't, people are just screaming the here it is, here's that Mamba mentality crap. He wants to be like Kobe and all. Yeah, and I think honestly it's unfortunate for him that whether he cares or not, but that's even out there, because this does not make him different from most superstars in the NBA. Most superstars, which he is in this league, at the end of a game, when a game is on the line, they want the ball, they're going to take the shot, and they're going to sort of dilly-dally looking for, what they consider to be the perfect opportunity. Now, it'd be great if he was maybe at the end of the game in times more willing to be a facilitator, go to Brown, go to Porzingis, I mean, even White, can certainly win you a game. Marcus Smart had opportunities, back when he was here at end of games. It would drive people crazy that he would ever take those shots, but every once in a while they went in. Guys, as you said, there are other scorers, there are other guys capable of winning you a game. Is this a flaw in your mind at all in Tatum's game, in not even in his mentality, but just in the way that some of these end of game situations look? Is it more about Tatum? Is it more about Joe Mazzulla? What do you attribute it to?
Well, it's funny. You look on the national TV stuff the day after the Denver game, and they're saying that no, Jayson Tatum needs to take over. He needs to step. It's like, wait a minute. Are you playing basketball, or are you playing a horse game or whatever? I mean, I haven't talked about this a whole lot, but in 2020, I had plans with Kobe Bryant to speak with him at All-Star Weekend about this issue, because Jayson had worked with Kobe. Mm-hmm. And the question was going to be basically, and Kobe knew what was coming. The question was, is it wrong to try to get another player to follow your path because they're not Kobe Bryant? It's like trying to get someone else to do what you did. It's kind of hard because they ain't you. Mm-hmm. And is that like and I think he kind of realized that that maybe the guys that he's working with or helping out have to have their own game, and copying his specifically is pretty damn impossible, because there's only a few people in history that could do what Kobe did in terms of getting his shot and the ability to make difficult shots. And again, if you look at a lot of Kobe's teams, he had some great teams around him. He had some not great teams around him, not some teams that didn't have quite the depth that even these Celtics do. Mm-hmm. On the floor. Depth of scoring potential. So I think that's an issue. To me, Jayson Tatum will be his best version when, again, running off some picks would be great for him. But when he gets the ball and he makes his first or second move, and when the defense comes, not only does he make the pass, but he makes the pass that crushes the opponent. When you think of Tim Duncan, the big fundamental, he wouldn't just pass out of the double team. He would make the pass that would kill you. And that's the kind of thing that I think will elevate Jayson. I mean, look, Jayson Tatum has the ability to be the best Celtic there ever was. Okay? That's within him, within his capability. And I think it's going to take that kind of thing in terms of his game specifically, but in terms of the larger picture, having that in his game and having that part of his game be a catalyst to the Celtics winning championships, plural.
Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's a tournament season or the fight for a playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Prize Picks is really simple to play, and I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Use the code CLNS for the first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
I'm going off course here, but you just said something I find really interesting. I want to keep going with it. Do you think, because I mean, I don't know Jayson Tatum. I know what I hear, I know what I read, but I don't know him. You've spoken to him, you've talked to him, you've at least some degree of a relationship with him. I have no idea how close, but do you think that he aspires to that? I know, he says all the right things in his media availability, and I genuinely believe, obviously, that it's important to him to not only get some of these individual accolades, but that it is more significant to win a title in Boston, to, he knows that to be considered among the Celtics all-time greats or an all-time great in general, you got to have that ring. It comes with the territory. And I think, he's said all that. I think he understands it all. But what you just said, has it within him to be the greatest Celtic ever? That's some pretty impressive company. Do you think that is something that he, even in a subconscious way, if not truly a conscious manner, that he aspires to?
Jayson Tatum's a bright individual. Intellectually, he knows what's at stake here. He knows what will build his brand, his legacy, all of these things. And he knows it's about putting hanging a piece of laundry from the ceiling, and more than one. I think what's important is that filters into his subconscious as well. Guys like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson have been running off picks forever. That's that's on their computer chip. Okay. So those guys, that's why that team was successful, right? Because, you got to guard Steph Curry, but it's not about Steph dribble. It's about, he's running through a maze, and you gotta find him through that maze before you can, defend him. So I think that's something that needs to be, as time goes on, it'll be there. And I think it is something that's got to be, like you mentioned, subconscious as well. I mean, I've talked to Pierce and those guys, and you ask them, could you guys, Pierce, Garnett, Allen, could you guys have done that 5 years, 10 years, or 5 to 8, 9 years before that? And they'll say no, they weren't ready to do that. I don't think Jayson Tatum is out there playing for himself. Okay, I don't think he's there going, out to hell with everybody else. This is about me. That ain't him. But it's just, and it doesn't, and it's not just him. The players around him have to understand too. If he's giving it up, and he's running through picks, you got to reward those cuts. You know, the worst thing that can happen to a team is guys make great cuts and get open and don't get the ball because they're going to be more reticent to make the cut next time. And that's what kills you. Look at how many times you can say it was the Celtics defense screwing up in Denver, but how many times guys just got free for boom, you know, backdoor cut. You know, you got to reward that stuff. So that takes a whole team thing. And to say that the Celtics don't have it, we're not saying that either, because look how often they do have that. And I think that would be the frustrating, if I were a Celtic fan, that would be the most frustrating thing, is you're seeing the kind of basketball this team can play, which is, you know, really among the best that basketball can offer as a sport. That kind of social, the passing, all those things, guys making plays, guys passing up good shots for better shots. That's beautiful stuff. So it's there. And the Celtics are going to need to make sure that they trust that it'll be there and do what's necessary to make it be there in crunch time.
I'm with you. I mean, it's when they're clicking in terms of the ball movement and obviously just draining shots left and right. I mean, that's some 86 Celtics stuff. It's some, you know, Duncan Spurs stuff. It's stuff that, you know, very few teams are capable of doing and that we see on a regular basis, let alone annually. And yeah, this Celtics team is, not that you can expect it on a night-to-night basis, but is absolutely fully capable. The Tatum obviously just being the superstar, the face of the franchise. There are so many components to him and his game and his, you know, season that do fascinate me. And this is, you know, mainly a talking heads thing, but so many, Boston and nationally, you know, have been trying throughout the last, I don't know, month and a half, let's say, to speak Jayson Tatum into the MVP conversation. And I have found it kind of ridiculous because, you know, I just don't think the MVP award is very simply, let's give it to the best player on the best team. And I know there are a lot of subjective components. I certainly don't hold a vote, but Jayson Tatum is, and I say this not in reaction to the Denver game, I've been saying this all the way throughout, even after his best games, he's not the MVP. I think he will be at some point, but this year, he's not the MVP. He's not even top 3 as far as I'm concerned. You know, so really it's a two-man race. It's Jokic and SGA, and you know, while SGA is not the favorite, that's who would get my vote if I did have one. I think he has been incredible, and Jokic you could get the MVP to literally every year. And obviously Embiid was right there until, you know, injuries took him out of the conversation because he no longer fits the requirements as far as winning the award. But as far as, you know, Tatum goes, all of a sudden they lose to Denver and he's a no-show by his standards, I suppose, in that game. He was bad in that game. And they lose, very close game, as you know, we talked about, you wrote about, 5-point loss there to the Nuggets on the road, and even as poorly as he was, it was that close. But now the reaction is, well, of course he's not the MVP. How can you give that guy the MVP? And people start talking about the, you know, no-show in the finals against the Warriors, and he wasn't the best player then. It was Jaylen Brown on the Celtics side. And then last year, you know, he wasn't so great in that series against Miami, and then obviously gets hurt in Game 7. And so, you know, it's another what could have been. It's this guy isn't doing it in the absolute biggest games. You know, I know he has to. You know, he has to do it in the finals for people to just get off his back as far as that narrative goes. But does all of this stuff just kind of get dizzying and lost and annoying and unnecessary? Or do you think just in today's day and age, it's all relevant?
I think in terms of the Celtics, it may not be the best thing for the team if Jayson Tatum were to be going for and putting up colossal numbers that would make him an MVP. Because the way that this team can beat you, and its superpower is the fact that it has so many really, really good players. I mean, you know, you could have certainly made a case for Porzingis for All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not saying, you know, and I was going to get to Derek White, and then tell me how important Drew Holiday has been for this team. in ways that don't necessarily appear on the stat sheet even, but 1,000 different ways how critical Drew Holiday has been for this team. And then you look and say, you've got Al Horford. You've got an Al Horford coming off the bench. Okay. And you've got Sam Hauser, who is the kind of guy that, was one of the people who would always kill you from on the Heat, right? Those kind of shooters. So, yeah, I think the MVP is, look, Nikola Jokic got it, but that's just because he is such a hub on that team, right? And I don't think, they've got good players around him. I don't think they have Celtic level players around him necessarily. And I love Jamal Murray. And I think Aaron Gordon, to digress for a second, when the Celtics picked up Kristaps Porzingis, my question at that time was, you're giving up Marcus Smart. How many games is Porzingis going to play? What's losing Marcus Smart going to do to your defense? They pick up Drew Holiday. It's like, it's fine. But people were criticizing Kristaps Porzingis. Well, what's he done? If Kristaps Porzingis is your best player, probably not that great a team. If Kristaps Porzingis is your third best player, whoa. When Aaron Gordon was the face of the Orlando Magic franchise, things were difficult. When he's the third guy or so in Denver, it's all context is what I'm saying. So, yeah, I mean, MVP, being able to show your individual skills. I'll go back to something I've been saying for a billion years. There wasn't a day in Bill Russell's life that Wilt Chamberlain wasn't a better individual basketball decathlete. Okay? But Bill Russell understood the object of the game in a way that Wilt never fully grasped. And maybe that's because he was the Colossus and so much was put on his head and so much was expected of him that he felt he had to live up to that. But so the bottom line is Wilt Chamberlain is still, if Wilt Chamberlain were to be 30 years old today and plunked into the NBA at where he was at 30, he'd still be a Colossus. But Wilt ends up being that guy, and Bill Russell ends up being the greatest winner in the history of team sports. Okay, so, Russell won his share of MVPs, but, how did he do it? By what he did for the team situation. So, I think the MVP talk, it's something that the league loves because you're talking about the NBA. They love these, the talking heads on TV. It's great stuff for them. They'll never, ever give a specific definition of the requirements because they want you to argue about it. It keeps the NBA in the public conscious. But I don't put a whole lot of weight in that, as you can guess.
So I'll only keep you a couple more minutes, but I'll leave you with this one. We have spoken in the past when you've been on the show about how, candidly, I don't think either one of us puts a whole lot of weight in the regular season at this point. We know that the Celtics are, fully equipped, if healthy. It's always the important caveat to win a championship, to raise banner 18. That being said, as they run away, with the NBA by the standings, metrics anyway, we know they're going to be the top seed in the East. We know the East, the NBA is likely going to go through Boston in terms of, again, seeding, but we just saw what we saw from the Nuggets. And as far as I'm concerned, literally they're the champs until, someone proves otherwise, but they are just incredible. I wouldn't go into a 7-game series, Boston against Denver, with any sort of, overwhelming confidence. Of course, the Celtics are the favorites. They're going to win this series. The Nuggets are fully capable of knocking off the Celtics, and I don't think, just a couple games that we've seen so far have made people feel any bit otherwise, or at least they shouldn't. But is there anything down this stretch of the regular season here that there is left to show you, to maybe heighten your confidence in this team's potential going into the postseason? Is it winning, some more of these close games and performing better in those clutch spots?
I think yeah. I mean, you want to see them handle adversity in the right way. I mean, I've said this and written it before a ton. Perhaps the worst thing about hero ball is that sometimes it works, and that can be dangerous. Yeah, there's going to be times over the rest of this season and in the playoffs where the ball is going to be in Jayson Tatum's hands or Jaylen Brown's hands, and they're going to just have to make a play. Okay? They're going to have to beat a double team or something like that, and they're going to rise up and they're going to make a shot. And you can look at every great player we can imagine and point out a highlight reel of them doing that in big situations. Okay? Magic Johnson's baby hook against the Celtics in the finals. 1,000 things, right? So, but more to the point, when they encounter adversity in the playoffs, again, even to a degree over the rest of the regular season, how do they respond? Last night in Phoenix, there were a couple of times where they responded in ways that maybe weren't what you'd want to see, But what was the play? If there was one play that sticks out to you in that game last night, what was it?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, to me, the pass to Drew Holiday, cutting, turns the corner, throws it out to the corner to a wide open Al Horford for the 3-pointer. I mean, that's winning basketball. If you look at Denver and how they came and how they beat the Celtics, yeah, you can look at some of the crazy shots that Jamal Murray made, but he didn't have a great shooting percentage in that game. You can definitely look at the way that Nikola Jokic pulled his way inside and scored. But there was also the critical thing was the slip pass to Aaron Gordon. Those are the kind of things it's like, wow, yeah, they're going to run their high pick and roll, and they know what to do off it. They have all, the old Celtics teams, under Heinsohn and those guys, they had 5 or 6 plays, but 5 or 6 options off of it. So, yeah, I'd want to see how this team reacts when adversity hits. And I think that's what's going to decide. I think that's entirely what's going to decide how this team fares in the postseason.
Well, the road trip is not over yet, although it's certainly a lot easier than what it's been so far. Games in Portland and Utah Monday and Tuesday, and then it's back home for another game against the Suns. We'll see if Devin Booker's out there for that one. He missed this previous one, as did Kristaps Porzingis, so to some degree, I guess that evens things out a little bit. Either way, Celtics won, so who cares what ultimately the roster looks like. But the C's do get back to work on Monday. Always enjoy having Steve Bulpett on. Check out his work on heavy.com. You can see him on Twitter at Steve B. Hoop. Steve, thanks so much, as always.
Good to speak with you, sir.
All right. Evan Valenti will be back with us next week as well. For Steve, I am Adam Kaufman. Do check out the podcast. It is called Celtics Beat. Rate, review. Most importantly, though, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. On to more wins, hopefully. We'll talk to you again next week.